Hello, everybody. This is Global AI, the podcast, and you're listening to the episode 25. I am Arafat Tessin, joining you from Sydney, Australia. I am a Microsoft MVP for artificial intelligence and a solution architect during my day job at EY. I have with me one of the top voices of LinkedIn, who's also based in Sydney, um, Raymond Sun. Raymond, can you please tell us a little background about yourself, and then we talk about your interest in AI and law, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Arafat, and hi everyone. You had a very fancy countdown for your podcast. Just want to say that.
Thanks.
yeah. My name is Ray, and I'm a technology lawyer based in Sydney at Herbert Smith Freehills, which is one of the bigger law firms in Australia. And as a technology lawyer, my specialty is in AI. So AI advisory, AI law, that's what I do. And basically, what I do is I help clients, both small and big, with their AI projects.
Hmm.
Basically, clients come to me with an AI project. I advise them on the risks, the legal risks and issues that could arise from that project, and I advise them as to how they would mitigate that risk, including helping them write contracts or as well as instructing some of the bigger clients with setting up AI governance processes to make sure that they're adopting responsible AI practices. And the reason why I'm into AI is also because I'm an AI developer myself. I've been
Hmm.
building apps and tools since high school, and one of my more well-known AI projects is around 3 years ago I built an AI tool that can analyze your dance moves. So basically, you take a video of yourself, you can analyze how synchronized you are, the difficulty of the dance, and you can apply that to yourself. You can also apply that to other dance videos. And I applied my AI algorithm to a bunch of K-pop dance videos. So because they're really like
Yeah.
popular for being synchronized. And I put that on YouTube, and it got pretty popular and got pretty famous. That kind of kickstarted my social media journey. I'm active on YouTube, LinkedIn, and TikTok, where I often talk about AI tech, AI products, also AI tips, and specifically on LinkedIn, I have a huge focus on AI regulations and AI legal
Hmm.
issues. And actually, recently I launched a website that tracks all the different AI regulations around the world, which is free to access. Yeah, I'm sure Arafat can put the link up in somewhere in this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
basically what I do. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I never knew about the dance move side of the world. By the way, like I knew you've got a very fantastic website for regulations.
Mm,
Highly recommend. I'll definitely put all of those links uh, in the show notes when we publish this. So you will, whoever is listening, you can go either on, if you're listening to the audio podcast, you will find under the show notes over there. Otherwise, you will find under the YouTube video.
mm,
This is really fantastic, Ray, because you have been juggling from, like, not just from like the legal part, but you are also working hands-on in AI. I think that makes more um, that makes better for you to understand the whole circumstances of like how things are going, and it looks like that it keeps you stand out, or it makes you stand out in front of the um, other part other people who are just working on the legal part of it, I think. So
mm.
this is really cool. Never knew about this. Not from the
Thank you.
dancing part, yeah. So since you're working so much into the legal industry, and I've been following you on LinkedIn, um, where so the question comes in, like, yeah, we have talked about AI risk, and especially with the generation, or with the evolution of the generative AI. We have seen
Mm,
so many frameworks coming in, governance models coming in, and people talking about it, people taking it seriously, because now because of the hallucination part.
mm.
But where do you see, or how do you see AI impacting the legal industry in next 5 to 10 years?
Sure. So, just to frame my answer, AI has already been used by law for already quite a long time.
Hmm.
So when we talk about how is AI impacting law, I assume you're more focused on how is generative AI, the
That's
more
right.
recent
Yeah.
AI
The
apps
more
impact.
recent. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's okay. So, but before generative AI became popular of this year, many law firms have been using AI, whether it be a actual direct AI solution or an AI that's embedded within wrapped within some other software to help
Hmm.
review documents, to identify trends in certain like matters, pricing. So AI is not completely new to law. So law has
Hmm.
been in that sort of space for a long time. But when it comes to generative AI, the biggest standout is the language models. And I
Hmm.
think people can often associate how, law is a very humanities, very written text heavy profession. And
Yeah.
language models seems like a no-brainer. Okay, yeah, language models will have a huge opportunity in the legal space. And it is true. So, but you also have to consider the structural factors within the legal industry. So I work in a big law firm. So I guess just a disclaimer, probably my perspective is a bit biased towards the or biased from within the corporate space. But
Yeah.
generally, the legal industry, compared to other industries, is not as fast in terms of adopting these generative AI tools. And there are several reasons for that. So
Hmm.
probably the biggest reason is the confidentiality piece.
Yeah.
So this is quite universal among enterprise
That's right.
stakeholders, but basically, but in law, the confidentiality takes on a greater degree of importance and risk due to our ethical duties. So
Yep.
all lawyers have an ethical duty to like respect the confidentiality of their client.
That's right.
You might have heard the term privilege. Privilege is what is a unique aspect between a lawyer and a client. If you break that privilege, then you lose your license. So the risk of breaching confidentiality in a law context is much higher compared to every other office type job. So that's the
That's right.
biggest issue. And right now, apart from downloading local models, it the most of the sophisticated AI solutions are still third-party services, whether it be
Yes.
connecting through an API or you know using the subscription model. There is still an element of trust with a third-party provider, and it's a bit there's a because of the high risk. There's a lot of it was well understood why there's a lot of conservatism and risk aversion when it comes to sharing client data with third-party services. So that's probably the
Hmm.
biggest obstacle that really dictates a lot of the pace in tech adoption generally in law. But if
Yeah.
we go down further, the second obstacle, which you already mentioned, Arafat, is the hallucination bit.
Yeah.
So law will have to be very technical and we have to be really accurate with the way we advise clients. And
Hmm.
there's a risk that if a junior lawyer or someone who's not well averse with how the limitations and the constraints of AI, there's a risk that they could you misuse that or use AI in the wrong context to produce advice that ends up being erroneous or wrong for the client. So that's another big risk that we have to be aware of, which is not unique to law, but I guess again it's a high degree of risk in law due to the nature of the profession. And then the third factor is more of a commercial side,
Hmm.
but most law firms and lawyers, our pricing model is that we charge by time. So the more hours you spend, the more money you make. So
Yeah.
inherently, this is not just an AI issue. This is a general tech adoption, digital transformation issue. When you become efficient, if you don't change your pricing model, that means you spend less time on a task, which means you charge less. So that's
True.
why right now, up in parallel to the whole digital transformation conversation, there's also a separate conversation on pricing. How should law firms and lawyers change the way they price their services? And I guess
Yeah.
probably the most obvious solution now is to consider fixed fees or value based pricing, where it's not so much focused on input time, but more focused on the output. And that's if you have that model, then that drives efficiency and incentivizes adoption of these tech. But as I said, that's a third obstacle. It's really one and two that are really the big ones. Yeah.
Yeah. These you made some really good points in the last one around the business model. Like
Mm.
as we progress in this age, I think there is a need not just for law firms. for every other firm as well to think, rethink on the business models. We have seen like there have been copywriters, although yes, I'm not against, like I'm 100% pro copywriters. They are still producing what language model cannot do for now. But we have seen that those who were trying to get rid of those kind of people, they did in a hurry, and then they just like, oh no, fine, my AI will write it for me. I don't need you. Um, they needed to change the business model. I was reading yesterday about the ha- some of the businesses who had a crackdown and they filed a bankruptcy. Although I think Blockbuster was not one of them, but Blockbuster had a good learning lesson from Netflix when Netflix went to them, and then they said no, no, no. They made fun of Netflix, like, who are you to buy? And we have seen that people have changed their perspective. People wanted ease. Netflix won that model. Blockbuster, they were charging basically for late fees. um, they j- nobody bothered at the end. So um, coming to this part of the world again, to legal side, you talked about one of the things which you talked about, Raymond, was the third party models. Now
Mm,
and you also know the technicality of it, that these are so big,
mm,
so big, that they are nearly impossible, especially for normal enterprise. I would say not even small, medium sized business.
mm,
I would say like uh, a basic enterprise to even host that in house, right?
yeah.
So how does the industry um, work around this? Because do they put some framework on security, confidentiality? Like Microsoft says that yes, we if you use open Azure Open AI, your data remains within that window.
Mm,
It does not go
mhm.
out. So is this the only approach, or do you see something else as well coming up? How do we tackle this?
I'll give you a short term, medium term, and long term answer to this.
Okay.
So short term answer is what you mentioned. The big tech companies, like for example Microsoft, offering these enterprise grade, high security type solutions, where fundamentally it's still an API connection, but by contract and by design, the big tech provider promises you that only your data will be just between the tech provider and the firm. Nothing will go out. No one will see your data. So that's the short term solution. And I can see big tech companies going to compete in that sort of space. So there's not that much a law firm can do from that end. Is more just the who provides a safer and more trustworthy connection.
Hmm.
That's the short term. Medium term, this is where the law firms can get involved. Is trying to partner up with a legal tech
Hmm.
startup or a tech provider. So you might have seen some law firms announce partnerships with certain tech businesses that provide this sort of AI service. And the idea is quite similar to the short term vision, which is you're still outsourcing the third party, you're still outsourcing the AI capability to a third party, but instead of a big centralized like tech company, you do it
Hmm.
with your own local partner. So you're with them, you invest in them. In return, they provide that AI capability to you only. So the key thing is exclusivity, and it's a medium
Okay.
term type of vision because you have to find in the market who's willing to partner with you, and once you find one, they're stuck with that law firm for a long time. So it's a kind of winner takes all type of situation.
Hmm.
The long term situation is where law firms can adopt their own local models, which, as you said before, is a bit hard now because they're so big. But
Hmm.
there are lots of research efforts into quantization. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I got that term right. Quantumization, where
Yeah.
they're trying to make the model smaller and smaller and smaller so that it can even fit on your mobile phone. So that's a
Yeah.
long term thing. It's a very much a technical type of a challenge, but I can see that being becoming the more popular option once that technology does get to that point.
That's right. That's right. And that's why we have seen like models like Llama, and the smaller
Mm,
version of Llama has now
yeah.
come in, and 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 I think they have got a partnership with different other
Mm,
frameworks like Onyx Runtime, and then you can use that. Yeah, that's I think that's a good approach. They will. definitely, if anything comes up on the edge, I would say it would be considered as a priority. Um, wh- what so if we talk about this right now, coming to the different part of like taking our discussion to a different level, that how do you think AI
Mm.
generally, not just like we can consider generative AI, will change the role of like lawyers and legal professionals? What do you think? How it will change it, or is it really changing it? It or you're not afraid of it, Raymond?
I think there will be change. I
Hmm.
think I think the change will just be lawyers becoming more focused on more complex and high strategic work. So
Hmm.
I guess that's a pretty obvious answer. It's not just the legal thing, but applies to many
That's
industries.
right.
The low value grunt work will eventually
Yep.
be automated. So that's the generic answer. But I guess a more sophisticated answer is you also don't know how will the industry itself and how the work itself will change.
Hmm.
A very common view is that lawyers will have an easier job. The job will become easier because AI can do many things. But I actually think work will become harder because
Hmm.
eventually in the future, once AI becomes like a mainstream tool that's been used across many tasks, number one, I think it will create more demand for high volume work. You might have
Hmm.
heard of the paradox called the Yvonne's paradox, where
Yep.
basically it states that the more efficient something becomes, the more resources it will take up actually. So it's a counterintuitive type of paradox where
Yeah.
basically if lawyers become more efficient,
Hmm.
then the market will expect faster turnarounds for
Hmm.
higher volume of work. So it
Yeah.
might be that we just end up being busy again. It's kind of like how when the email came in that overtook the fax machine, back
Yeah.
then people probably thought, oh, our lives are going to be easier. But
Yeah.
as we all know, when email became mainstream, work became more frequent, more volume,
Yeah.
faster turnaround. So we're just as
That's right.
busy. So that's one aspect to that. And the second aspect to that is we'll get to a point where we see the limitations of AI in terms of legal reasoning. I know
Hmm.
there are some news reports about, GPT-4 passing the bar exam and stuff like that, but that's very much a constrained test environment. Because exam papers, you can have lots of precedent, lots of past papers. You train them on a
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
structured format. Of course, you do well, but in the real world, legal matters are very complex, and there's a lot of factors and variables. And until we can find a very formulaic way of systemizing these variables, which I think it's very hard to do. Law will always be a challenging, multi-layered type of exercise, and so there will be more requirement and high demand for talent to be concentrated in these high complex problems. So at the end of the day, I think legal work will just become more faster, more busy, and actually more intellectually challenging. That's my contrarian view.
Good. Good. And this brings me to another part of this question, which I kept for you after this is
Mm,
fine. People have or started learning, or they have already learned, let's say, how to use AI
mm,
in the legal departments, in the law firms. The problem comes in where regulators or policy makers um, are not able to ensure that, or they are unsure about it, that AI is used responsibly and effectively in the legal industry. So how do we ensure that yes, whatever they are doing comes under the ethical framework or your policy framework of a law firm? Because you are the people, like the lawyers are those who people are looking at like as a role model. So
mm.
how do we ensure that part?
Yeah, so the I guess there are two layers to this answer. I'll talk about the enterprise business layer and then the broader government regulation layer.
Hmm.
So on the enterprise layer, it really comes down to two things: your policy framework and the culture slash training. So
Hmm.
basically, my job, I help clients write up these policies. So these include AI governance policies, policies that tell employees how to use, chatbots responsibly. stuff like that. So it's a bit similar to writing privacy policies when privacy became a new thing back then. Just help companies set up that system. But that's only, let's say, 30% of the solution. 70% is actually the practical compliance. And that requires training, a lot of training, cultural shifts, making sure that people at a subconscious level know how to use AI responsibly. Just like how today many people at many organizations know how to treat privacy responsibly. It's a
Yeah,
long-term thing that a piece of paper can't just do immediately. You need to have that training.
that's right.
So that's what that might be like a decade type of transition. Who knows? It might be faster, but it's going to be a long transition. On the government level, that's where lots of governments around the world are trying to look for whether they should regulate AI as a whole or they should rely on existing laws. That's often the big question that many governments are facing, including Australia. Australia recently held a consultation for public input as to what's the best approach to AI.
Mm,
My tracker basically summarizes of the various positions approaches taken by countries, but generally I see three themes. First theme is countries that have actually enacted or proposed AI specific regulation. So basically, laws and rules that directly regulate AI. So, for example, you have Europe, they've got a draft act on AI across the board.
yep.
So, one act
Yeah.
regulates AI, every type of AI application out there based on their risk nature or their
Yeah.
risks. On the other hand, you have China, which are regulating specific AI applications one by one. So
Mm,
far, they've regulated recommendation algorithms,
mm.
deep synthesis technology, which is basically deep fake generators, and most recently, generative AI. And in fact, that law came to force on the 15th of August, which is yesterday. So that's a
Oh.
very fresh news from China. The second theme is countries which are relying on ethical frameworks and also
Mm,
relying on their existing laws to govern specific risks of AI. So, for example, privacy, IP, consumer protection. There are laws on each type of issue, and it's just a
mm,
matter of trying to piece together these laws to regulate a specific AI project or product. That's where Australia sits in, including US, UK, and Singapore.
mm,
And then the third theme are countries which haven't really thought too much about AI because it's not their priority, or countries which have openly and also consciously decided to not regulate AI thus far. And the biggest example is India. So a few months ago, the IT ministry announced that they won't regulate AI for now. They want their market to innovate as much as possible, catch up with
mm.
the other countries until at a certain point they'll then consider AI regulation. There's no right answer here. It all depends on what your country's circumstances, legal,
Mm.
political, economic. So I can't really judge who's got the best approach, but that's generally
Yeah.
the themes that I'm seeing right now.
Yeah. I think that also depends upon the economic situation and how the the government is thinking about taking risks, right?
Mm,
The approach of like doing everything and then we'll regulate later on can be a very um, fruitful can have a fruitful outcome as well. We do have like I do have like two very important questions, but
mm,
I am short of time, so I'll request you to give me a quick answer first, and then my
sure.
next question can have a longer one.
Yeah.
So since we have talked about the legal frameworks and everything, where do you see that the potential is going, not just in legal industry, um, generative AI to transform how things are going in general in our daily lives? Just a short answer because this is what I wanted to know from all of our experts who are coming into this podcast. So, yeah, your projection of generative AI within our daily lives.
I think it will evolve just like how privacy has evolved. It,
Mm,
AI safety, responsible AI will eventually be common knowledge to every citizen, and we just know how to use it properly. I think it'll eventually be like that.
Cool. Very concise. Very, very nice. Very good answer. And what is the advice you would give to the students who are pursuing law? And of course, everybody wants to come into this space, as it has become as famous as the mobile apps, or when the mobile like came in, iPhone came in.
Mm.
So what would be your piece of advice?
I think always value cross domain expertise, and actually more practically have a dual interest, cross interests. Eventually AI will be used to automate many things, but AI will be very hard, but ultimately people will still need to be able to use it and implement it to a certain use case. AI needs a use case, just like with
Yeah,
every technology. The use case is defined by the industry, and the industry is defined by people who work in that industry. And these people are defined by knowledge. So you can be of a common, I guess, it's not a mistake, but I don't think it's the right answer to just study AI engineering or AI tech
mm,
purely because of the current, I guess, hype. I think it's equally valuable to also, in addition to learning the technology, also build a strong basic foundation knowledge and experience and wisdom in another domain. It could be
yeah,
law, health, whatever. And the opportunity lies in how you connect your domain with AI. So I think so definitely don't try to neglect everything and focus purely on AI. Study AI, but also study your other field. And that's
mm,
where I think that's the most future proof approach, I think.
good, good. Yeah, definitely. This is really nice. And thank you. So the time has come. Unfortunately, like I had so many questions, but we'll stop over here. We will definitely invite you some other time as well to discuss some other topics. But thank you so much, Raymond, for your time, and it was a pleasure having you. We'll definitely catch up once again in person. So I'm glad that I've met Raymond once last year, and hopefully we'll be chatting again and inviting you. So for everybody who are listening to us right now, thank you so much for listening us, and who are watching us, thank you so much for watching us as well. We'll be back with our episode 26 next month, and stay tuned till then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rafa. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.